In life, as in philosophy, true strength arises not from the ability to dominate others, but from the ability to master oneself. Our mission here is not judgment, but understanding a search for truth through wisdom that has endured since ancient times. The Stoics teach that to live fully, one must grasp the intricacies of human nature in oneself and in others, so that one might transcend the traps of fleeting passions. Together, let us uncover truths that demand self-control and fortitude, truths that reveal the weaknesses embedded in our very nature and challenge us to rise above them. To appearances. Attachment to appearances is a powerful yet often invisible chain, binding us to how we believe others see us. In a world captivated by the superficial, by beauty, success, and status, it's easy to fall into the trap of measuring our worth based on how we appear, rather than who we are. This can be especially challenging in modern society, where physical appearance and social standing are often viewed as measures of personal value. Social media, advertising, and even casual interactions feed this attachment, creating an endless loop of comparison and external validation. Epictetus, a revered Stoic philosopher, cautioned us to remember our role in life, to focus on playing it well rather than seeking validation. To constantly seek affirmation from others is to place our happiness in their hands, making us vulnerable to their judgments and whims. As soon as we tie our worth to external markers like beauty or wealth, we give others power over us. Imagine the immense liberation of no longer worrying about how others perceive us. The Stoic approach to appearances urges us to detach from these external markers and instead to cultivate virtues within wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These are qualities that no opinion, no fleeting trend can diminish. By investing in our character, we free ourselves from the unending chase for approval. Our Stoic response, true freedom, comes from within, from valuing one's inner virtues over outer appearances. As we unburden ourselves from the need to project a perfect image, we gain an enduring peace that no judgment can unsettle. This is our lesson: respect that is rooted in substance, not surface. Fear of loneliness. The fear of loneliness runs deep in human nature, often disguised as a longing for connection, companionship, and love. While these are beautiful aspects of life, the Stoics understood that dependence on others for a sense of completeness or worth can become a significant weakness. When we fear solitude, we become vulnerable, seeking relationships not out of genuine connection, but as a refuge from the discomfort of being alone. Seneca, a Stoic thinker who deeply explored the human condition, wrote that every person's best friend is himself. This friendship, this relationship with oneself, is fundamental. Why? Because to rely on others to fulfill our happiness or calm our anxieties is to place our peace outside of our own control. What happens then if the people we lean on are no longer there? The fear of loneliness would then trap us in cycles of dependency, eroding our resilience and weakening our inner resolve. Imagine solitude not as an absence, but as a gift, a space to explore who we are without the noise and expectations of others. In embracing solitude, we find that we are indeed complete, that our contentment need not hinge on anyone else's presence. When we achieve this inner fullness, we are capable of truly enjoying relationships without relying on them as a crutch. Solitude, as the Stoics saw it, isn't the enemy, it's a mirror, reflecting back the resilience and peace we can only discover within ourselves. Our Stoic response embraced solitude, not with fear but with strength. By cultivating peace in our own company, we no longer feel the pull of dependency on others. This frees us to enter relationships with wholeness and independence, seeking not to fill a void but to share in a life that is already complete. When we understand this, we see that loneliness is not conquered by mere companionship, it is dissolved by self-sufficiency and a profound inner peace. By mastering our attachment to appearances and our fear of loneliness, we begin to reclaim control over our own lives. Stoicism teaches us that these attachments are not inevitable but challenges to be faced and transcended. When we overcome them, we reach a place of inner strength that no external force can weaken, becoming steady and resilient even in the face of life's uncertainties. Sensitivity to criticism. Sensitivity to criticism is a common human reaction when others point out our flaws or question our actions. We often feel a pang of defensiveness or even shame. This sensitivity can be particularly limiting, as it binds our sense of self-worth to the opinions of others. In constantly seeking praise and fearing critique, we become reactive, our emotions swayed by every external judgment, be it from friends, family, or strangers. The Stoics, however, saw criticism differently. For them, life was an arena of growth, where every experience, even uncomfortable feedback, was an opportunity to become wiser and more resilient. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change." This openness to correction is a powerful stance. It turns criticism into a tool for self-improvement rather than a source of injury. If we approach criticism with this Stoic mindset, we learn to take a step back, to question whether there's truth in what's being said rather than reacting defensively. Criticism, then, becomes a mirror reflecting areas where we can refine ourselves. It's not about blindly accepting every comment, but sifting through them with a calm and objective mind, acknowledging truths and discarding distortions. In this way, criticism strengthens us rather than diminishes us. Our Stoic response criticism can be a means of sharpening our character if we let it. By receiving it with equanimity, we learn to separate our ego from our actions, viewing feedback as a tool for growth rather than an attack. The aim is not to become immune to feedback, but to harness it in our journey to become better, wiser individuals. This self-mastery liberates us from being captive to others' opinions, empowering us to live by our own values. Seeking comfort over growth. Seeking comfort over growth is an insidious tendency, a temptation that disguises itself as contentment or ease. Comfort is naturally appealing, drawing us to situations where we feel safe and unchallenged. But as the Stoics observed, a life spent in comfort is a life untested, and thus, it is a life unfulfilled. Growth happens not in moments of ease, but in moments of strain and discomfort. Only when we push ourselves to confront difficulty do we discover our true resilience and strength. Epictetus, a former slave who became a renowned Stoic philosopher, warned against the lures of comfort. Difficulties are things that show a person what they are, he taught. When we shrink away from challenges, we avoid not just hardship, but the opportunity to develop virtues like courage, patience, and endurance. Comfort keeps us where we are, while growth demands we go beyond our present limits. This path of growth may be daunting, but each step we take beyond our comfort zone forges us into something greater. The Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort is a powerful example of rejecting comfort for growth. By choosing to periodically live, simply reducing reliance on luxuries, or testing oneself through physical endurance, one trains the mind to endure hardship with grace. This practice strengthens us so that when real challenges arise, we are not only prepared but almost eager, seeing them as opportunities to deepen our character. Our Stoic response seeks growth over comfort, for true fulfillment lies on the other side of discomfort. By deliberately embracing challenges, we condition ourselves to be resilient in the face of adversity. Every time we resist the pull of ease and push ourselves toward growth, we inch closer to self-mastery. In doing so, we build a strength that comfort alone could never provide, fostering an enduring resilience that empowers us to navigate life's storms with grace. Emotional impulsiveness. Emotional impulsiveness is the tendency to react instinctively, driven by our immediate feelings: anger, excitement, fear, without careful reflection. In moments of emotional impulsiveness, we surrender our self-control to fleeting sensations, allowing our moods to dictate our actions. Such reactions can be destructive, leading to decisions we later regret, words we wish we hadn't spoken, or actions that undermine our integrity. The Stoics saw emotional impulsiveness as a sign of inner unrest. They taught that true strength lies in the ability to observe one's emotions without being ruled by them. Epictetus urged, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them." Emotions are not inherently harmful, but when we allow them to control us, we become vulnerable, swayed by every trigger. Instead, the Stoic ideal is to become an observer, to watch emotions rise and fall like waves, but to remain centered, choosing our responses thoughtfully. Imagine being confronted by an insult or a frustrating situation. Our instinct might be to respond immediately, perhaps with anger or frustration. But a Stoic would pause, recognizing that the initial surge of anger is merely a sensation, a passing reaction. In that pause lies freedom, the freedom to choose not to let anger dictate our actions, but to respond with composure and wisdom. Our Stoic response by learning to control our reactions. We transform emotional impulses from masters into servants. We don't deny our feelings but acknowledge them, and then decide how to act based on reason and virtue. Through this practice, we cultivate a calm that endures, becoming the architects of our actions rather than victims of our emotions. This is the power of self-mastery, an inner fortress that remains steady regardless of external turbulence. To resentment and holding grudges. Resentment and holding grudges are heavy burdens that we carry in our hearts, often for far longer than the events that sparked them. When someone wrongs us, we may feel a natural impulse to hold on to the memory, replaying the incident and fueling a sense of injustice. But this attachment to past slights drains our energy, keeping us trapped in a cycle of anger and bitterness. For the Stoics, resentment is a poison, one that harms not the person who wronged us but ourselves. Marcus Aurelius observed, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." To hold a grudge is to keep ourselves tied to past injuries, allowing others' actions to control our inner state. The Stoic approach is to let go, not to excuse wrongdoing, but to release ourselves from the toxic weight of anger. This doesn't mean ignoring injustice, rather. It means choosing not to let it disturb our peace. Imagine how freeing it would be to forgive not for the benefit of others, but for our own liberation. When we release resentment, we reclaim our emotional sovereignty, refusing to let past events dictate our present happiness. Seneca, another great Stoic thinker, advised us to view others with compassion, understanding that we all have weaknesses and make mistakes. By letting go of grudges, we practice humility, acknowledging our own imperfections and the impermanence of life. Our Stoic response release resentment as an act of self-preservation, a means to maintain clarity and peace. By letting go of grudges, we free ourselves from a life of bitterness, reclaiming our mental space for constructive thoughts and actions. Through forgiveness, we take back control over our own happiness, refusing to let others' misdeeds dictate our state of mind. This is the path to inner peace of freedom that allows us to move forward unburdened by the past. Sacrifice of self for approval. The sacrifice of self for approval is a pervasive tendency, driven by a desire to be liked, respected, or accepted by others. When we prioritize the opinions of others over our own principles, we lose our sense of identity, adapting ourselves to meet external expectations, rather than living according to our own values. This can lead us to compromise our true beliefs, act inauthentically, and ultimately distance ourselves from our own essence. Stoicism teaches that true strength and happiness come from within, not from external validation. Epictetus warned against this dependency on others' opinions, saying, "If you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your integrity." When we constantly seek approval, we place our self-worth in the hands of others, and thus become vulnerable to their changing judgments. The Stoic ideal is self-approval rooted in virtue and wisdom, an inner compass that remains steady regardless of praise or criticism from others. Imagine walking a path that is meaningful to you, only to alter your course each time someone questions or doubts you. Soon you would lose sight of your destination entirely, wandering in pursuit of others' preferences instead of your own purpose. To the Stoics, this is a kind of self-betrayal, a surrender of the self to the unpredictable tides of social approval. True self-worth comes not from others' validation, but from living in harmony with one's own values. Our Stoic response let us strive to ground ourselves in our own principles and values. By learning to approve of ourselves based on our adherence to virtue and wisdom, we reclaim our freedom, no longer swayed by the desire for acceptance or praise. In doing so, we become resilient, empowered by an inner sense of worth that is unshakable and authentically ours. This is a form of strength that no external approval or disapproval can touch, a quiet but powerful confidence in living according to our own truth. Distrust of silence and solitude. Distrust of silence and solitude is an aversion to being alone with one's own thoughts, a discomfort with the stillness that reveals our innermost selves. In our noisy, interconnected world, silence and solitude can feel unsettling or even threatening, as they remove the distractions that allow us to avoid confronting our fears, insecurities, and desires. Many fill their time with constant activity, conversation, or entertainment, as if fearing the insights that quiet moments might reveal. For the Stoics, however, solitude was not something to avoid but to embrace. Silence and solitude are opportunities for introspection, a chance to connect with one's true self and to cultivate inner strength. Seneca wrote, "People seek retreats for themselves in the countryside, by the sea, in the mountains. But you are very much mistaken if you believe that you must go anywhere beyond your own mind." To the Stoics, the ability to be alone without restlessness was essential for achieving peace, as it reflected a self-sufficiency unshaken by external noise or approval. Imagine sitting alone in a quiet room, away from the distractions of the outside world. In this moment, you are confronted only with yourself, forced to examine your fears, your regrets, and your aspirations. This may feel uncomfortable, but it is precisely this discomfort that leads to growth. Silence becomes a mirror, reflecting the depths of your character and revealing where there is room to strengthen or realign. The Stoics knew that a strong character is built not in the constant buzz of company, but in the quiet forge of solitude, where we confront our innermost thoughts and reshape them. Our Stoic response embraced silence and solitude, not as an escape, but as an opportunity to deepen our self-understanding and cultivate resilience. By learning to find comfort in our own company, we free ourselves from the need for constant stimulation or companionship. This is a quiet strength, a self-sufficiency that fosters inner peace and allows us to act from a place of clarity and purpose, rather than from the noise of the outside world. Reliance on others for happiness. The reliance on others for happiness stems from a deep-seated need to feel valued, secure, or fulfilled through external relationships. While companionship and community are natural human desires, making our happiness dependent on others places our well-being in vulnerable hands. When we expect others to provide us with joy or meaning, we essentially surrender control of our emotions and peace of mind, becoming subject to the fluctuations of their actions, moods, and priorities. The Stoics taught that genuine happiness must come from within, rooted in virtues and inner strength. Epictetus advised, "Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourselves." Happiness, he believed, is a state that arises from how we respond to the world, not from what we receive from it. By grounding our happiness in our own character, actions, and choices, we become less vulnerable to the whims and volatility of others. Relying on others for happiness ultimately weakens our resilience, making us overly sensitive to disappointment, rejection, or conflict in relationships. Imagine relying on a friend, partner, or family member as your main source of joy. When they fall short of your expectations or their lives take a new direction, your happiness is shaken, perhaps even shattered. But a Stoic seeks to cultivate an inner reservoir of contentment that is independent of external relationships. When we find happiness within, relationships become sources of enrichment rather than dependency. We can enjoy others' company without requiring them to fill a void within us, freeing us to experience relationships with love, generosity, and freedom from attachment. Our Stoic response let us learn to find fulfillment in our own actions, growth, and virtues, drawing happiness from within rather than seeking it in others. When we no longer depend on others for happiness, we strengthen our inner foundation, becoming resilient and self-sufficient. This inner contentment allows us to engage with others from a place of love and generosity rather than need, building relationships that are fulfilling yet free of dependency. Fear of change. Of change. The fear of change is a reluctance to let go of the familiar, clinging to the stability and comfort of what is known, even if it limits our growth. Change disrupts our routines, challenges our assumptions, and often demands that we confront uncomfortable truths. This fear of change stems from our instinct to preserve what feels safe, often leading us to resist new opportunities, relationships, or perspectives that could ultimately bring us wisdom and strength. The Stoics believed that change is not only inevitable but essential for growth. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change." By embracing change, we align ourselves with the natural flow of life, learning to adapt and grow rather than resist. The Stoic approach is not to cling to what is comfortable, but to face change with courage, knowing that each transition is an opportunity to learn and evolve. Consider how life might feel if you resisted every change, holding on to old habits, clinging to familiar situations, even when they no longer serve you. This resistance ultimately narrows your world, confining you to a limited set of experiences. But a Stoic welcomes change, seeing it as a chance to test and strengthen one's character. By embracing change, we cultivate resilience, learning to adapt to life's inevitable transitions with grace. Rather than fearing the unknown, we learn to trust our ability to navigate it, knowing that change, though challenging, is often a path to greater understanding and self-discovery. Our Stoic response: let us not fear change, but embrace it as a teacher. Each change, no matter how unsettling, is an opportunity to strengthen ourselves, to grow in wisdom, and to become more adaptable. By welcoming change, we align ourselves with life's natural rhythms, building resilience that remains steady through every transition. This is true freedom, the ability to face the unknown with courage, knowing that we have the inner resources to handle whatever comes. To see these tendencies, these vulnerabilities, is not to judge, but to learn. As men and women, we all bear weaknesses. They are the weight we carry in life. But the Stoic path demands that we do not yield to them. Let us be vigilant, mindful of these tendencies within ourselves and those we care for. With self-control, fortitude, and a commitment to grow beyond fleeting emotions, we can rise above these limitations. Our journey is one of transformation, strengthening ourselves and guiding those around us to do the same, in the spirit of wisdom, resilience, and the mastery of self. If this video resonated with you, if it sparked a desire for inner strength and clarity, then join us on this journey. Liking this video lets us know we're on the right path. And by subscribing, you'll stay connected with content that challenges, empowers, and encourages personal growth. Let's build a community of resilient minds together. So, hit like, subscribe, and let's continue seeking wisdom and inner mastery together.